Miles, a quiet 32-year-old who had spent most of his life being overlooked, stood frozen in his hallway staring at a lawsuit he never imagined would involve his own mother. Karen had actually sued him over a rumor that he won the lottery. A rumor born from a Facebook post that had nothing to do with him. "This can't be happening," Miles whispered, yet the official stamp on the papers said otherwise. He had worked hard for everything he owned, but somehow his family believed he was hiding money. It felt like his world tilted into something painfully unfamiliar. Growing up, Miles watched every blessing fall effortlessly at the feet of his younger brother Chase, the unquestioned favorite. While Miles worked late shifts and saved whatever he could, Chase received brand new gifts, paid rent, and endless praise for the smallest achievements. Even at family dinners, Miles's accomplishments vanished in silence while Chase's stories filled the room like fireworks. His fiancée Harper once whispered, "They treat you like you're invisible." Miles only shrugged, too used to the imbalance. But this lawsuit, this ridiculous claim of secret lottery winnings, felt like a line he could no longer ignore. The rumor started in the most unbelievable way. Miles's old friend Derek won $10,000 on a scratch-off ticket and proudly posted a photo online holding the oversized check. A distant cousin misread the picture, cropped out Derek's face and declared that Miles was the winner. The family group chat, one Miles wasn't even part of, exploded with wild guesses and imagined dollar amounts. When Chase called and said, "Congrats on the big win," Miles blinked in confusion. "What win?" he asked. But the more he denied it, the more they believed he was lying. Logic had officially left the building. 2 days later, Karen called with a sharp tone that felt cold enough to cut through the phone. She interrogated Miles about his savings, his spending, and even his upcoming wedding with Harper. "We need to talk about your winnings," she demanded. "I didn't win anything," Miles said calmly. But Karen refused to listen, convinced he was hiding money that she believed Chase desperately needed again. When Miles questioned the constant favoritism, she snapped, "We raised you. You owe us." Harper, listening nearby, shook her head. "This is unreal," she murmured. Something deep inside Miles finally tightened into resolve. Everything escalated when a court officer knocked on Miles's door holding a thick packet of documents. Karen had officially sued him for $75,000. Money she had already divided in her own notes between herself, her husband, and of course Chase. Miles stared at the papers in disbelief as Harper whispered, "This is beyond wrong. Fight it." For the first time, Miles agreed. He hired an attorney named Rowan who reviewed the claim and said, "There's no basis for this at all. But we will respond properly." Miles nodded slowly. If his family wanted a war, he would no longer stay silent. Rowan filed the response immediately, stating clearly that Miles had never won any lottery and that Karen's claim had no evidence at all. She asked Miles for bank statements, pay stubs, and anything that showed his normal income. "This will end quickly," Rowan assured him. "They have nothing except a rumor." Miles sighed, still struggling to believe this was real life. Harper sat beside him, holding his hand as she said, "You're doing the right thing." But Miles couldn't shake the heaviness building in his chest. He knew his family wouldn't let this go without turning it into a storm. The situation worsened when Karen's lawyer demanded that Miles prove he didn't have money, a request that made Harper nearly laugh in disbelief. "They want you to prove a negative?" she asked. Rowan nodded. "Yes. It's ridiculous, but we'll handle it." Meanwhile, word spread across the entire family. Cousins Miles hadn't spoken to in years began messaging him with guilt trips. One wrote, "Why not just share a little? It's family." Another said, "Chase really needs help. Don't be selfish." Miles deleted every message, feeling the pressure tighten like a rope around his chest. No one asked if the rumor was even true. The final blow came when Harper showed Miles a post from one of his aunts. It read, "Sad to see someone change so much just because of money." Beneath it were comments blaming Miles, shaming him, and praising Chase for staying humble. Miles stared at the screen in silence. "They've already decided who the villain is," Harper said softly. "And they won't change their minds." Miles nodded slowly. "I'm done trying to please them." He felt something shift inside himself. An old wound finally closing. If this lawsuit was the price of peace, then maybe it was worth it. 3 weeks later, Rowan submitted all financial documents proving Miles had never received any large deposit or won any lottery. In return, she demanded proof from Karen's side. They sent one thing. A cropped screenshot of Derek's Facebook post that didn't show Miles, didn't show a name and didn't connect to him in any way. Rowan stared at it, speechless for a moment. "This is their entire case?" she asked. Miles nodded. "That's all they ever had." Harper laughed bitterly. "And they were ready to tear your life apart over this." Rowan placed the screenshot aside. "Then we're moving for dismissal." The hearing was set for early morning on a Thursday. Miles arrived wearing his best shirt, Harper by his side and Rowan walking confidently ahead of them. Karen stood across the room with Chase and her attorney, looking smaller than he expected. When the judge entered, the room fell into silence. Karen's lawyer began by presenting the Facebook screenshot as if it were a treasure map. The judge paused, stared at it, then slowly looked up. "Counselor," she said, "this is not evidence." Miles felt Harper squeeze his hand. For the first time in months he felt hope rising in his chest. Rowan stood and presented Miles's bank records, tax documents, and the official letter from the state lottery office confirming he had no winnings. Then she showed the judge the full uncropped photo of Derek holding the oversized check. "This," Rowan said calmly, "is the real winner." The judge compared both photos, her expression tightening. "So the plaintiff sued her son based on a cropped image and assumptions?" she asked. Karen shifted uncomfortably. Chase looked at the floor. Miles didn't speak, but his heartbeat thundered in his ears. For the first time the truth didn't feel invisible. It felt undeniable. The judge turned her attention to Karen. "Ma'am, do you understand this claim has no legal foundation?" Karen clasped her hands tightly. "Everyone in the family said he won," she murmured. "Social media is not evidence," the judge replied firmly. Karen's attorney attempted to argue about family testimony, but the judge cut him off. "Testimony based on a rumor is not testimony at all." Harper sat still, watching Karen's face shift from confidence to confusion. Miles felt a strange calm settle over him. This time he wasn't the child waiting for approval. He was the adult standing in the truth. The judge dismissed the lawsuit with prejudice, preventing Karen from filing it again. Then she moved to the countersuit. Rowan spoke carefully, listing the harassment, emotional stress, attorney fees and months of disruption to Miles's life. Karen's attorney objected weakly, but the judge waved him off. "Your client filed a baseless claim without evidence," she said. "The consequences fall on her." When the judge ordered Karen to pay Miles's legal fees, the courtroom fell silent. Miles swallowed hard, unsure how to feel. Harper whispered, "You did nothing wrong." And for once Miles believed it. Outside the courthouse, Karen burst into tears. Chase tried to comfort her, whispering things Miles couldn't hear. Rowan handed Miles the paperwork, saying, "They have 60 days to pay." Miles nodded, still processing everything. Harper placed a gentle hand on his back. "Let's go home," she whispered. But before they reached the parking lot, Chase called out, "You didn't have to do this." Miles turned. "I didn't sue anyone," he replied quietly. "I defended myself." Chase shook his head in disbelief. "You ruined everything." Harper stepped forward. "No," she said firmly. "Your mother's choices did that, not Miles." The following weeks were filled with angry messages from relatives. Some accused Miles of being heartless. Others demanded he forgive Karen and drop the judgment. No one asked if he was okay. No one apologized for assuming he had money. Harper deleted every message that slipped through. One evening she said softly, "Your family doesn't want truth. They want control." Miles leaned back in his chair, exhausted. Maybe this was the only way I'd ever be free. Harper nodded. Sometimes peace costs distance. Miles felt that truth settle in his chest like something heavy, but something healing. By day 30, Rowan informed Miles that Karen and her husband had tried applying for loans to cover the judgment but were denied. Their savings were nearly empty. Chase couldn't help them. Relatives refused to lend money. Harper asked, "How are you holding up?" Miles exhaled slowly. "Part of me wishes it hadn't come to this." Harper shook her head gently. "It came to this because they refused to listen." Miles knew she was right, yet the guilt tried to creep in. Not because he had done wrong, but because he had finally stopped carrying a burden that wasn't his. 2 days before the deadline, Miles received a call from Karen. Her voice trembled. Please drop the judgment," she whispered. We'll lose everything. Miles closed his eyes. You sued me, he said quietly. For money I never had. Karen's breathing hitched. I know, but Chase needed help and we thought. Miles interrupted sharply. You didn't think. You assumed. You never asked me anything. Silence stretched through the phone. Then Karen added softly, your brother only needed 8,000. We thought there might be enough left for us. Miles felt something inside him harden. I can't undo the court's decision. On day 60 the payment was made, barely. Karen and her husband had taken a bridge loan against their house. Rowan confirmed the judgment was satisfied. Miles felt relief mixed with something like sadness. Harper hugged him tightly. It's over, she whispered. But the financial strain was just beginning for Karen and her husband. A month later, Miles heard from a cousin that their house sale had fallen through due to structural issues. With no way to repay the loan, they declared bankruptcy. Miles sat quietly after hearing the news. Harper touched his shoulder. Their choices led here, she reminded him gently. Bankruptcy forced Karen and her husband to move out of their home into a small apartment. Chase moved in with them, sleeping on an air mattress in a tiny den. Miles watched from a distance as the consequences of their decisions unfolded. Relatives continued blaming him, saying he should have shown mercy. Harper pushed back. Mercy isn't giving people rewards for hurting you, she told him. Still, Miles couldn't deny a small ache in his chest whenever he thought of the life they once had. But he reminded himself, they chose this path when they chose to take him to court. One evening months later, Miles heard a knock at his door. When he opened it, Chase stood there looking thin and exhausted. Can we talk? He asked softly. Miles let him in. They sat in the living room in awkward silence until Chase finally said, I know things are bad, but I wanted you to know I'm not here to ask for money. Miles raised an eyebrow. Then why are you here? Chase swallowed hard. Because I finally see how messed up everything was. Mom and Dad didn't help me. They disabled me. And you paid the price for all of it. Miles studied Chase carefully, unsure whether to trust the sudden honesty. Chase looked down at his hands. I know you won't believe this, but I wish I had stood up sooner, he said quietly. I let them treat you like you didn't matter because it benefited me. Miles didn't respond immediately. There were years of silence behind them, years of favoritism that had shaped everything. So what do you want from me? Miles finally asked. Chase shook his head. Nothing. I just needed you to hear that I get it now. For the first time, Miles saw sincerity in his eyes. Before leaving, Chase paused at the door. You were never selfish, he said. You were just tired of being blamed for everything. Miles didn't know what to say, so he simply nodded. After Chase left, Harper stepped into the room. How did it go? She asked gently. Miles leaned against the wall, feeling overwhelmed. I think he actually understands now, he whispered. Harper smiled softly. Growth is messy, but at least he's trying. Miles nodded again. It was strange, he felt relief, sorrow, and something like hope all at once. The weight he carried for years felt just a little lighter. Spring arrived with new energy. Miles and Harper continued planning their wedding, focusing on joy instead of drama. They chose a quiet venue, invited close friends, and embraced a life that no longer revolved around pleasing people who never appreciated them. One night, Harper asked, Do you think your family will try to come? Miles shook his head. They didn't listen when I spoke. They didn't support me when I needed them. I won't invite them to the happiest day of my life. Harper squeezed his hand tenderly. Then we'll fill the room with people who truly love us, she said. Their wedding day arrived on a bright April morning. Miles stood at the front of the small garden venue, feeling the warm sun and a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. Harper walked toward him in a soft white dress, smiling the way only she could. Their friends cheered, their vows were filled with emotion, and for once, Miles felt surrounded by genuine care. After the ceremony, a friend asked, No family at all? Miles smiled gently. No, he said. But I'm not missing anything. And in that moment he truly believed it. After the wedding, Miles and Harper spent 2 blissful weeks in Hawaii. They turned off their phones, shut out the world, and allowed themselves to heal. Miles felt the tension of the past year slowly melt away as they walked beaches, hiked trails, and watched sunsets. One evening, Harper rested her head on his shoulder and whispered, This is our life now. No more battles. Miles breathed deeply, letting the truth settle in. Yeah, he said. This is ours. For the first time his future felt uncluttered. No guilt, no manipulation, just open space and possibility. When they returned home, Miles discovered several voicemails from his father, all asking, "Can we talk?" He ignored them. He had learned that conversations with his parents were rarely conversations. They were demands wrapped in guilt. Harper asked, "Do you want to call him back?" Miles shook his head. "I can't go back to that life," he said. "Every time I try they pull me into their chaos." Harper nodded. "Peace is a choice too." Miles realized she was right. Sometimes walking away wasn't weakness, it was survival. Summer arrived, and with it came news that shook the extended family. Karen filed for divorce. The financial strain, the bankruptcy, the constant arguments, and the blame had finally torn the marriage apart. Miles heard this from a cousin who added, "Some relatives think you pushed them to this." Miles exhaled slowly. "I pushed them. They sued me." Harper rubbed his back gently. "People rewrite stories when the truth is too heavy for them." Miles nodded. It amazed him how easily some relatives twisted reality to avoid holding Karen accountable. But he refused to carry their narrative anymore. Karen moved into a one-bedroom apartment and took on 2 jobs to survive. Her online posts became a mix of sorrow and self-pity. Meanwhile, Chase moved into a rented room across town, working at a grocery store and trying to rebuild his life. Miles watched from a distance, feeling neither joy nor revenge, just acceptance. "People create their own consequences," Harper reminded him. He repeated those words often, letting them loosen the guilt that tried to cling to him. The storm his family created had finally passed, but the damage remained with those who caused it. One afternoon, Miles received a handwritten letter forwarded through Rowan's office. It was from Karen. She apologized, admitted she had been wrong, and said she missed him. But beneath each apology was a justification. Fear of retirement, worry for Chase, pressure from relatives. Harper read the letter quietly. "She still doesn't get it," she said. Miles nodded. "She's apologizing for the result, not for her choices." He folded the letter and put it away. Some bridges he realized were safer left burned. By fall, Miles and Harper bought a larger house. A warm, bright space where they could imagine raising a family someday. On moving day, Harper hugged him from behind and said, "Look how far you've come." Miles smiled, feeling full for the first time in years. The irony wasn't lost on him. While his parents blamed him for their downfall, he was building the life they never believed he deserved. As he looked around the new living room, he whispered, "This is what peace feels like." And for the first time he fully believed it. Thanksgiving arrived quietly that year. Instead of the tense gatherings he remembered, Miles and Harper spent the holiday with her family. Warm people who welcomed him without judgment or conditions. During dinner, Harper's uncle asked politely, "Do you still speak to your parents?" Miles shook his head softly. "Not anymore." The uncle nodded without pushing. No guilt. No lectures. Just understanding. Later that night, Harper whispered, "You don't owe anyone access to you." Miles held her close, grateful for a kind of family he never knew existed. One built on respect, not obligation. It felt like healing in slow motion. December brought the familiar sound of Christmas music in stores and soft lights glowing across town. Miles and Harper spent the evening decorating their new home, laughing as they placed ornaments on the tree. When they finished, Harper handed him a small gift. Inside was a framed picture of them on their wedding day. "A reminder," she said, "that you chose your own future." Miles felt his chest warm. He thought about past holidays filled with tension and forced smiles. This year was different. No guilt. No expectations. Just peace, something he had earned through courage and painful clarity. A few days before Christmas, Miles received a final call from his uncle, the same relative who had pressured him months earlier. "Your mother is alone for the holidays," the uncle said. "She wants to see you." Miles responded calmly, "She knows how to reach me if she truly wants to take responsibility." His uncle sighed. "She's suffered enough." Miles shook his head even though the man couldn't see it. "She suffered from the consequences of her choices, not mine." After the call ended, Harper asked what happened. Miles replied simply, "I'm done letting people rewrite the truth." Christmas morning was simple and beautiful. Miles and Harper exchanged gifts, made breakfast together and took a quiet walk through their neighborhood. Children played with new toys on the lawns and families gathered around decorated windows. Harper slipped her arm through his. "You good?" she asked. Miles nodded softly. "Better than I've ever been." He didn't miss the chaos. He didn't miss the judgment. He didn't miss pretending everything was normal with people who never treated him fairly. For the first time, Christmas didn't feel heavy. It felt like a fresh chapter, a life not tied to the past. The new year came with a sense of renewal. Miles started taking weekend classes to advance in his field, something he never felt encouraged to do while living under his parents' expectations. Harper supported him every step of the way, reminding him that growth didn't stop just because he had found peace. One night she said, "You're becoming the man you always wanted to be." Miles smiled at her words. For years he had been shaped by what his family denied him. Now he was shaping himself, on his own terms at his own pace, fueled by his own quiet strength. Spring returned, marking 1 full year since the lawsuit began. Miles stood on his porch, sipping coffee and thinking about how drastically his life had changed. He no longer felt angry. He no longer felt broken. Most importantly, he no longer felt responsible for fixing a family that refused to see him. When Harper joined him outside, she asked, "Thinking about the past?" Miles nodded. "Yeah, but not like before. More like, acknowledging it." Harper leaned against him. "It made you stronger." Miles agreed. The storm had shaped him, but it didn't define him. Not anymore. Later that month he ran into Derek, the friend whose scratch-off win had accidentally triggered the entire disaster. "Man, I still can't believe all that happened because of my post," Derek said, shaking his head. Miles laughed lightly. "You didn't do anything wrong. My family just needed a reason to explode." Derek nodded. "Still wild though. You okay now?" Miles smiled genuinely. "Better than okay." Derek grinned back. "Good. You deserve that." As they parted ways, Miles realized how far he had come. A rumor once shattered his life, but truth and resilience had rebuilt it stronger. Summer brought warmth and a sense of calm. Harper planted flowers in the yard while Miles worked on small home projects. In the evenings they sat together on the porch and talked about the future. Careers, travel, maybe children someday. Harper rested her head on his shoulder. "You know," she said, "your story could have ended so differently if you had backed down." Miles nodded. "But then I'd still be trapped in their world." Harper smiled softly. "You chose yourself." And in choosing himself, Miles realized he had built a life where love wasn't conditional and peace wasn't temporary. By fall, Miles rarely thought of the lawsuit or the chaos that came with it. His parents' choices had led them down a hard road, but he had finally stepped off that path. One afternoon, Harper asked, "Would you ever consider reconnecting with them someday?" Miles thought carefully. "Maybe, if they ever take full responsibility." Harper nodded. "And if they don't?" Miles looked around his home, feeling grounded. "Then I still have a good life." It wasn't bitterness, it was acceptance. He had learned that family wasn't just blood. Family was love, respect, and people who didn't hurt you by choice. On the anniversary of the court ruling, Miles sat quietly in his living room, reflecting on everything that had happened. A rumor had nearly broken him. A lawsuit had tried to ruin him. But standing up for himself had set him free. Harper walked in, smiling as she handed him a cup of tea. "Here's to another peaceful year," she said. Miles lifted the cup gently. "Here's to choosing better," he replied. And just like that he closed the door on the past, not with anger but with clarity. His story didn't end with revenge. It ended with peace, growth, and the life he built on his own.